The reason that I think it's important, or that we have to, is because we have something coming at us that we're not able to solve if we just keep going. And what's coming at us is climate change and climate collapse. And you may say, for me, I'm a contrarian. So if you say up, I go down. If you say right, I go left. If you say right, I go wrong. Whatever it is, I'm that person that takes an opposing position. And I've been taking an opposing position on climate collapse for pretty much my entire life. So I've been studying this and thinking about it and rolling around my head. I've had conversations with some of the smartest people in the world who study climate collapse just because I've decided I really need to have conversations with them. I've gotten to the point where, for me, I have to start to assume that this is the real deal, and it's happening, and it's here, and it's in our faces. And it's increasingly every day looking like that's the case. And what I want to say to you all, and this directly goes with our class today, is scientists, people who study science, myself included, social science, we're not all out just trying to convert people to our way of seeing the world. The vast, vast majority of us are trying to get at the truth. We're trying to figure it out. We're not brainwashed by other people around us. We're not brainwashed by money and power and this. We're really, really trying to get to the truth. You do your undergrad work, and then you go to grad school, and then you study after that. So, in total, you're in the university seriously studying for 10 to 12 years. And then your whole career is about studying. The vast majority of us are really trying to get to the truth. And the people that study climate change and study climate collapse, the Greens, about 90, I just want to give you this graph because it's a really good graph. About 97% are just like, no question about it. All the Greens, anthropocentric climate change is happening. It's affecting us, and it's going to really have an impact in our lifetimes. The lifetimes, including my lifetime, and we're already seeing that it does. 2 people are saying yeah, these are people that study this. 2 people are yeah, no, it's real, but I'm not so sure the degree to which human beings are really so incredibly involved in this. Could be some other thing, but there are a lot of other things that the gray is. And then the red is like the contrarian, and you always need at least one contrarian. You need someone who's always going to be in the group saying, what about this and what about that? So there's basically unanimous understanding that this is real and it's happening. So now we say, okay, well, don't put our heads in the sand. What are we going to do? What do we need to do? How should we think about this? How do we make it happen? So go to the next slide. So just a couple things for those of you who are still yeah, but maybe it won't affect us in our lifetime. Look, the Chinese government, if there's a propaganda machine anywhere in the world as powerful as the Chinese government, I have no idea what it could possibly be. That's their conclusion of top Earth scientists, no question. Next slide. And these are all the organizations just here in the U.S. that are this is real. Anthropogenic climate change is real. It's happening. It is going to radically disrupt life on Earth. So, I'm not going to argue with any of these. When the insurance companies are on board, this is a real deal. So now I say, all right, what are we going to do? Because here's the impact of this. Go to the next slide, if you would. So the World Bank just came out with some data saying, listen, man, in the next 10 years, 100 million people for sure are going to lose their livelihoods, lose their homes. They're not going to be able to live where they're currently living. That's over 100 million people. That's a lot of people looking for somewhere to go. That's in the next 10 years. They might be wrong. Maybe it's 8 years, or maybe it's 15 years, or maybe it's 20 years, but 100 million people, you all. And then we go, what about the next 10 years? Is it another 100 million people? And then, we look at billion people could be displaced within 30 years. 1 billion people. There's 1 billion people. And we're sitting here in the United States having conversations about 14,000 Haitians on the border in Del Rio, Texas. And we're looking at potentially 1 billion people. This is 1/8 of the planet. 1 billion. It's like a freight train is coming at us. And, we can not pay attention to the sound because for whatever reason we feel we can't do something about it or maybe we can convince ourselves it's not real or it's this or it's that, but this is hardcore. Okay? So now mind you, I'm not depressed by it, right? Because human beings, we're amazing at what we can do when we put our minds to it, right? And this is just something that we need to put our minds to. And so I want to have this conversation about that fits with this class, about this umbrella that covers all of us, about all of us being humans, but yet we have these nations, we have these ethnicities, we have races, we have cultures, and we divide into teams and one thing after another. So, the issue, next slide. These are refugees from Syria. If you pay any attention at all to what's happening in Syria, know that the conflict in Syria is rooted in climate change. It's rooted in a doubt that they are absolutely 100% certain is linked to climate change. A kind of a drought that has never happened in history. It's like, yeah, it all fits together. So here's one. But all the refugees, these 100 million and then potentially billion people, next slide, they're from all backgrounds, man. They're not just Haitians, they're not just black, they're not from just Asians and from Bangladesh, and they're not just from Guatemala, and they're not just Middle Eastern, they're also white. So it's all of us. It's all this connection that we have together, okay? So now, what are we going to do? Because this experiment, this human experiment, cannot go on with this knocking at the door. It cannot go on. There's something that we must do. And it's not a time to put our heads in the ground. It's a time to say, damn, let me jump into this, because what a more awesome time to be alive than to be alive right now. And the stake of everything and everybody, when the future of everything and everybody around us is at stake. One more. Okay, final thought. And then we're going to start passing the microphones around and hear what you all have to say. So we live in this really precarious balance between the individual and individual needs and the community and community needs. Okay? And there are a lot of problems in the world that individuals can't solve, that only communities can solve. And the only way we can solve them is to work in a collective way together and figure out how to solve them. Because individuals making individual decisions are never going to figure it out. So individual nations making individual decisions can never fix this thing. And so somehow we got to figure out some way to work, to ask different questions and come up with different answers and work in some collective way together to figure out how we're going to do this. And I don't have the answer to that. I don't provide answers. I just ask questions. My job as a teacher is not to give any answers at all. My job is just to ask questions. So that's what I do. I ask questions. Just give me, I just want to hear some stuff about, what people are thinking. Where are we? Because, if you go back to this conversation with Ernst, and we think about, Haitians and what do we do? And, you got 14,000 Haitians, and if we bring these 14,000 in, and we got 14,000 more, and it goes there. It is so beyond that. We are so far beyond that. We're talking into the billion. And here's the thing. You may think I don't really want to, maybe we shouldn't do anything. We should just look out for our own. You know what? Last time, that's fine, but you got to deal with the consequences of that, right? So I was in Washington, D.C. right before the COVID broke. And I was blown away by how much homelessness there was. And I was like, holy shit. I've never seen so many homeless people in all my life. And I'm walking down the street, and we give $1 here and $1, this, that, and talk to some, whatever it is, right? Because, this is what it is. These are human beings, right? But dudes, it was a really disappointing. We were walking, we were at a conference and we were staying at this hotel, and we decided we wanted to walk down toward the White House and see some of the people who was protesting there. Because, someone's always protesting at the White House. And the walk was just so disappointing. I was like, oh my God, I don't need to see beauty at every moment, but I don't want to walk an entire, 12 city blocks, and the entire time I'm just thinking about, I'm wrestling with, what do I do? It's just people who are down and out, and what the fuck? That's not my idea of, this is not where I want to be. So now we double that and triple that. And think about how cool it is at Penn State. You're here, it's really nice here, you got, they take care of the lawns, and you walk across campus, and it's nice, and it's it feels good, and you feel uplifted. Throw 3,000 homeless people on campus. And when you're coming out of your dorm, you got somebody asking you for money. And then you got a refugee community right outside of town. And the refugees are coming into the community because they're trying to survive. And then you go back home and it's the same thing. And everywhere you turn, it's the same. And you're like, oh, shit. I didn't bargain for this. I thought I was just going to live my life and do what I want to do. But you can't do that because it's everywhere you turn. And some of the people are people that you know. And your own family members who have now been pushed out of their home. Because, Florida in 50 years, it's expected to be 30 to 40% of Florida is supposed to be underwater in 30 or, you know what I mean? By certainly another 70 years. It's okay, so there what? So you can't get away from it. You're not going to get away. And it's going to be like my walk in Washington, D.C. Just man, it's just disappointing. So now, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? And saying oh, there's nothing to do, we're doomed, we're whatever. Fuck that. No. I'm talking, we're supposedly the brightest, you're being prepared to be the brightest, smartest human beings on the campus. In the world. You're at a university. What are some of the questions that we could be asking that maybe would open us to seeing something in a new way? This is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. You got to give people as much freedom as they can possibly have, because that's the essence of this kind of liberal way of understanding the world. It's libertarianism you give people freedom. Let people do what they want to do. And yet at the same time, the only way to solve our problems is to come together and agree on things, or we're never going to solve this. And so somehow you sit here in this in this world where you got to balance these two things, freedom of the individual, but the need for the community to make some really difficult decisions. So what do you think? Where are we? What are just some questions you have?
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on this issue. I actually did a presentation in my geography class last semester about climate alarmism. The chart of people that you had up on the screen, I agree with those in green. I believe that climate change is real. What I don't agree is that it is an existential threat to humanity and our way of life. If we look back just the last couple centuries, we've seen life expectancy double. Thanks to industrialization, thanks to new technology, we've seen human life improve beyond our wildest dreams. And when on the slide we have up right now, individuals versus collectives, that's a very dangerous idea in my opinion, because when you say collective, you are alluding to putting a very few handful of people in power in this global response, which will be politicians, bureaucrats, and extremely rich people like Bill Gates. And we've seen how collective responses work, especially right now with the COVID pandemic. We've seen the World Health Organization, we've seen how different countries approach issues, and we see that different countries do different things. You have places like Australia, which is a complete police state. You have some Scandinavian countries, which are in complete freedom, and then you have America, where we're like, man, we're kind of in limbo.
All right.
But
hang on, let me respond. Right? Let me respond. Dude. God.
But collectivism, putting a very few set of people in power.
I'm going to respond to that. Yeah. So
and it always leads to tyranny.
No,
it always leads to tyranny.
Yeah, I will buy that. I agree with that. Right. And I I feel like I subconsciously put collectivities up there just to like poke at you so you would do what you just did. So here's the thing. I'm never the alarmist guy. Like I'm not, and this isn't climate. This is not alarmism, by the way. What I'm offering right here is like this is coming at us, and it doesn't. It's not about.
It's a freight train. We need to take big action.
Dude, it is. Here's the deal, right? We can. I've been really, really slow I'm always really slow to take any extreme position at all, right? And I'm not even taking an extreme position. So I'm really slow to do that. I think at this stage of the game, given the science that we know and really, really smart people, okay? And I'm not talking about the headlines and CNN and all that kind of stuff. I disregard all that. I don't pay attention to it because it's all clickbait. We have to assume that it is a freight train coming at us and we better figure out what we're going to do. And we're already seeing very, very clearly, not CNN headline that says, oh, it's the worst hurricane season ever. It's like, disregard that. No, I want to know. I want to talk to people who study hurricanes, and I want to be like, hang on a second. What's the real data say? Okay? We have to assume that it's a freight train coming at us. All right? We also have to assume that if that's the case, then we got to come up with a solution that we can all think about in a different kind of way. The reality is, right, individuals acting alone, this is sociological reality. Individuals acting alone never make decisions on part of the larger group. It's always a group that comes together and has to make some kind of group decision because that's the nature of it. Because individuals can't do that. And you always have to have collectivities. You have to have collectivities of people that make decisions for the larger group. Because if you don't do that, then nothing works, right? So for example, we have governments. All governments are. Don't think about governments in this like really like extreme way. All a government is, it's a collective body of individuals that represent individuals in a particular location, geographic location, that are going to make decisions on behalf of all those individuals. Like, for example, what happens when it snows and we got to shovel all the snows on all the streets? The government is there to say, like, okay, we're going to take care of that. Yeah, we're going to shovel snow. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it that way. There are lots of things that individuals cannot make. And you need to have then some kind of group that comes together and acts on behalf of those individuals, right? So the problem is, when that group comes together, it always is going to lean toward the possibility of some kind of tyranny, meaning that they're going to take tax money and spend it the way they want to spend. They're going to take tax money and spend it on themselves. They're going to do whatever it is. They're going to impose their will on other people. Just like anti-abortion people feel like, oh, these politicians or these Christians are imposing, or, the people that support abortion rights are imposing their will on the rest of us who think that abortion is a sin and murder and so on. People who think that abortion but the opposite happens in the same way. Everybody feels like somebody else is imposing it. What I'm suggesting here, bro, is like we will make collective decisions because we will. We have to. We have to. So the question is, how do you do that without it becoming tyranny? So that's what you're raising. And so I'm saying, like, okay, I agree with that. How are we going to do this without having stuff forced on us in a way that we can't sort of get back out of? So that's a good concern.
Yeah, I believe the way to do that is through persuasion. You give people information and they're able to make informed decisions.
So here's the problem with that, bro. Here's the problem with that. So as somebody who I spend probably 80% of my waking hours studying, trying to get at truth. That's all I do. And no matter what happens, I'm going to talk about this. Have you been watching in the media recently about the missing white woman syndrome?
Yeah, Joy Reid, MSNBC, all that good stuff.
Okay, all of the missing white woman syndrome, right? So the idea that, when black and brown women or girls go missing, then, somehow we just address them differently. Like, somehow we have all these opportunities to send police out and investigations and one thing after another, and somehow they're much more likely to be found. But when they're black and brown girls or women, somehow, nothing happens, right? And I read that, so unlike, I'm sure, anybody in the class, I have spent probably 8 to 10 hours in the past week studying this issue. I'm looking at research papers. I'm looking at who's writing about it. I'm looking at what is this? And wait, hang on. I can't say that. I'm reading articles and they're just interviewing someone off the street. Hey, what do you think about missing white girl syndrome? And you're like, oh yeah, I think it's real. And I'm like, what the fuck? What do you know? This guy doesn't know anything about it. I'm spending 10 hours, I'm doing nothing but reading about this, right? I get to the end of 10 hours and I'm thinking, what do I know about it? And I'm thinking, it's complicated. It's really complicated. So now, if we got to have some kind of vote here for the whole class, and we're going to decide about how we're going to address this issue, whether it's real first off, and then how we're going to address it, and we're going to be like, well, we're just going to teach people and we're going to educate them, and then so why don't you all just vote on it? Tell us what we should do. You don't know anything about it. You don't know anything. I spent 10 hours studying and I don't know anything, and I could spend another 30 or 40 and I still feel like I wouldn't know anything. Why am I going to ask you? So this is like voting. Like our so-called democratic system, all we're doing is we're just using the art of persuasion. We have one political party. It's called the Republicrats. Sometimes it's called the Demopublicans, but it's essentially one party. And all they're doing is trying to use the art of persuasion to get people who don't know anything about the issues to vote this way or vote this way. Because the vast majority of voters know nothing about what the issues are. And so that's an inherent problem. When it comes to something like climate change, my friend, with a freight train that probably is coming at us, maybe it's not, but we damn well better assume that it is. Because if it is, by the time you hear the freight train, there's no time to get out of the way. Then I'm going to leave it up to people who don't know anything? The fuck? I wouldn't do that. That would be like me leaving it up to you all. Why don't you just come teach my class, all of you? You just take everybody take 10 minutes and why don't you do it? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't trust most of you to walk my dog. And I don't even have a dog. Why would I trust you to be able to say something about climate change? So that's the essential problem that we're in. The other problem is, well, who do we do then? Do we only go to like the 6 people who have studied this thing and let them make decisions on behalf of all of us? No, we can't do that because that's because these 6 people might have some individual interests. So you would say, and I would say, that's the potential for tyranny. So we can't let you 6 make the decision. So now what do we do? What do we do? Where do we go from here? Because most of us aren't going to spend the time studying and thinking and doing the kinds of things we need to do. Dude, you're awesome, man. Thanks for that. Somebody else.
Hi, so my name is Antonia.
Antonia?
Yes. So I think the problem here is how we are viewing the problem.
Okay, awesome.
We say individual versus collective. Well, I see the collective problem as an individual opportunity.
Okay.
Take, I forgot his name, the guy from last class.
Yeah,
He
Ernst.
went out and created a business from the problems in his society to help people. Now he's making money, but he's also helping his society. So if everyone just look at the collective problem as an individual opportunity, it will be easy to solve the problem.
Yes. Here's the problem, though, right? In the process of doing that, we create other collective problems, like, for example, one of the reasons, if the climate scientists are correct, and again, I'm going to assume that they are because it's in my interest to assume that they are, and because if they are, we're in deep trouble. If they're not, whatever, we're going to do a bunch of stuff that, like, would be good for the planet anyway, but whatever, right? But in the process of all these individuals acting on their own behalf, which is important, mind you, it's really important, give individuals that opportunity, but they create global problems. The whole problem has emerged because nobody has been able to, nor can they presumably, because Avi it's a V, right? Avi is pointing out, like that just becomes like you have a few individuals that make a mandate for the rest of the world, and like that becomes problematic.
Just so basically, like, when these people are coming, like when individuals come out and act in leadership positions, obviously this type of things needs teams. And you need to, like, for example, Amazon did not just start off like with just Jeff Bezos. There was a team in there. So each team acting out will be examples that people can imitate. Right? It takes one individual action to make the collective. It takes one person to buy from Amazon to make everyone going to buy from Amazon. So that's just the thing. Like, if you look at the problem, it's because we're making it seem, obviously problems are going to keep changing because the world is dynamic. But if we start looking at these problems as individual opportunities, then we can start working on the problem rather than talking about the problem.
Yep, I got you. Okay, awesome. I hear that. Yeah, I mean, I hear that. And in the end, this would be the nature of free market capitalism, right? If the state didn't get involved and turned most of free market capitalism into state socialism, which is really what happens, certainly in the United States, but this would be the nature of truly free market capitalism.
So I feel like you asked a couple different questions, and like my answer to like how small we are in the comparative of our universe, we are so ridiculously tiny, and I want to dedicate my life's work to getting off this planet.
Dude, awesome, man. Yeah.
So
Wait, hang on. Can you get a close-up of her shirt right here? See that? That's the NASA logo. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think like we've ended up hitting our capacity of human beings on this planet, and we've exceeded it. But there's no ethical way of population control. So that's also...
Well, maybe there isn't. Maybe there is.
There might be, but it's a very controversial issue. It's one of the, no one really knows the correct way to answer it. So
well, can I just push on that?
Yeah.
Since you just hold your thought, right? Mm-hmm. In a way, there is an ethical way, right? Because everybody in here, I gave you those numbers the other day. 20,000 children die every day. We could save their lives in a heartbeat, right? Most of them die from diarrhea. So all they need is some clean water and some medication and get rid of the amoebas and one thing after another, right? And I've been in places where I've seen, children dying that don't need to die. I watched one child die in the hands of its parents right in front of me that did not, and I could have saved, but I couldn't save because I didn't have enough time to save, right? Everybody in this class presumably is ethical. And none of us, did anybody go out since the last class and figure out, hey, wait, how could I save the life of a child? Because 20,000 children every day? Nobody did, right? So we're still ethical. We're still operating in an ethical way, and we're operating with, in some ways, all the systems we have is an ethical system of birth control, population control, because what we do is we just let poor people die in places in the world where we don't look. So I'm not going to look there, right? You're not going to go. I can take you. I can easily. You and I could hop on a plane tomorrow, and I could take you right where you need to go, and you could watch children dying. But you're not going to do that. So, why would you do that? And so we're still in that. We've built an entire system that is ethical, and it allows us to reduce the population by certainly 20,000 children a day and more. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so that is not something the U.S. can't say, okay, stop having kids, because unfortunately, natural selection kind of takes course, and since we're not looking there, even though we have the power to save people, we aren't. So you guys are talking about the persuasion of the collective.
Yeah.
But I feel like you have to focus on the persuasion of the upper 1% of the population that has the money to do that, because unfortunately the world focuses on who has the most money. They have the power.
Yeah.
So if we were able to get the population who is under the 1%, the 80% that's very impoverished, if they were able to decide on one thing and they said, okay, this is the way to solve climate change. We got it. We figured it out. They would have to still persuade the upper 12% to get their vote. So I was like, how do we do that? How do we get the people with money and power to listen to everybody? Because it doesn't matter to them. They don't care.
No, that's not true. They do care. Everybody cares. They just also have competing interests, right? So everybody cares. So that's important. Stay right there. So when you say, wait, hang on, did you hear what she said? Right? They don't care, nobody cares. That's one of those. By the way, I love what you're saying. This is really good. That's one of those statements that we say that takes us off the hook. It's like clearly you're not a lazy thinker, but it's a lazy thinker question. Because it's like, oh, they don't care. And then I go back to, hey, I'll take another beer. You know what I mean? It's like, no, people do care. So then what keeps them from that? So I like what you're getting at. It's like, okay, hang on, we got to convince them. But what do we have to convince them of? Because...
So, people like Jeff Bezos and who have Amazon and have affordable products for people that, and are making trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
It competes against him if he was able to be like, okay, well, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to donate my money. And, so people are out of the situation where they can buy better things. Not that people won't still buy on Amazon, but that's what that's what the competing interest.
Okay.
So it's convincing them to go against their competing interests.
Okay. I got that. Here's the problem with that. My job is to just keep throwing, because we're trying to take the conversation to a different place. There's not enough resources on this planet, and you know that, because we'd need 3 to 4, the World Bank estimates we would need 3 to 4 planet Earths for everyone on this earth to live a life of an average, the life that most of you all are living. say an average college student. We need 3 to 4 planet Earths. That's not going to happen. So it's not about that then. We can't just elevate everybody and we can't take people down. So it's like, what do?
We get off this planet.
Okay, we have more people studying how to get off the planet. All right.